Hey all, welcome back to my channel. Today we're going to make the kids version of the Cassidy Peplum by 5 out of 4 patterns. And I'm going to use this panel right here for the front. So it's September, Halloween's right around the corner. I'm going to do some Halloween sewing. So this panel is from Raspberry Creek and it says, "Let's Go Ghouls." Super cute. We have the coordinating stripe here. And then I also have the same panel with more golds and blues for my son. So I love making matching sets for my kids, and I'm definitely going to do it while it lasts because who knows how long they'll actually wear the stuff I make for them. P.S. If you hear something that sounds like thunder, that's them running around upstairs. So I think that's it. If you want to see me sew it up, stick around. Here's our pattern we're sewing today. Again, it is the Cassidy Peplum by 5 out of 4. This is the kids version. We have a top, a knee-length dress, or a maxi. It comes with a crew neck or a scoop neck. You can do sleeveless, short sleeves, 3/4 length sleeves, or long sleeves. And then they also have a split short sleeve option that ties, which is super cute. You can also finish the sleeves with either hems or ruffles for a short and 3/4 sleeve, or for the 3/4 and the long sleeve, you can choose to finish it with a belt as well. The skirt lengths are peplum, knee length, and maxi, and the skirts can be either woven or knit. The bodice is knit, but you can choose what you'd like to use for the skirt. And then also you can finish the skirt with a hem, a ruffle, or a band. And you can also add pockets to the dresses if you'd like. So lots of options. And if we scroll up, here are some example pictures. And this one in the middle, here's that tie sleeve, which is super cute. And I would definitely be making that if it wasn't September. But it is. So I'm going to make the top length. Long sleeve, nothing special, just with the little peplum skirt. And I'm going to be using knit for both the bodice and the skirt. Here we have all our pieces cut out. So we have our front bodice, our back bodice, 2 sleeves, a neckband, and here's our peplum. You need 2 pieces for the peplum skirt, a front and a back. And because I'm extra, I decided to do a double peplum. So I cut a second peplum skirt and I just made it a little bit longer than the first, just so it would kind of peek out underneath the first one. So we'll see how that goes. Now I normally cut using a projector. I didn't film it because I thought it would be pretty boring, but if you'd like to see an in-depth projector cutting video, put that in the comments and I'll make it happen. So what I'm going to do now before I get started sewing is I'm going to take all of these pieces over to my ironing board and just give them a quick press just to get all the wrinkles out. I like to work with my pieces nice and flat and wrinkle free before I get started. I'm going to do that. I'll be right back. Alright, we have everything pressed nice. And in addition to just pressing everything flat, I also went ahead and I pressed the neckband in half, because that's going to have to be done later anyway. And I also did a memory hem in the sleeve. So this way, once it comes time to hem the sleeve, it's already pressed. I can just fold that up really quickly without even having to measure. Alright, let's get into it. So, step 1, we're going to take our bodices, right sides together at the shoulders, and stitch those. And the seam allowance for this pattern is 3/8. I'm going to be using my serger today. So we'll attach the shoulders. And you're probably thinking, why is she using 2 clips on such a tiny shoulder? Well, As I said in another video, I like everything to be clipped very nicely before I get to the machine. So you do you, and I'm going to do what I do. Step 2 is going to be to sew the side seams. So I'm just going to clip these as well, and then I can sew all 4 seams when I get to the serger. So we've sewn all 4 seams. Next step is to put in our neckband. And I'm sorry about all the angles. So this is only my 3rd video, so you guys are going to have to bear with me. I need to figure out a good setup. So I need to know what you all like and what you don't like. So tell me in the comments so that I can make these videos better. All right, so we're going to quarter our neckline. So what that means is we're going to find the center of the front and the center of the back. I'm going to mark each of those with a clip. And then once you have the center front and the center back, you're going to match those up to find the other 2 quarter points. Now you'll notice the quarter point is not the shoulder seam, and it typically isn't. So don't just default to using the shoulder seams, because that typically won't be accurate. Once we have that done, we're going to grab our neckband piece, and you're going to place the 2 short ends right sides together and sew that with a 3/8 inch seam allowance. We've sewn our neckband. We're going to go ahead and fold that back in half, and this is where that crease comes in handy. It's much easier to fold back in half. Then we're going to quarter this. So our seam is our first quarter point. You fold it in half at the seam. The opposite end here is our second point. Then if you match those 2, you'll get your last 2 points. Then to attach it to the shirt, you just match up each of the quarter points. We're going to sew this on with a 3/8 inch seam allowance, and you're going to gently stretch the neckband in between quarter points until the bodice part is flat. You don't want to overstretch it to stretch out the bodice. You want to just gently stretch it so that the bodice is flat, so you don't have any puckers or any stretching when you attach your neckband. We have our neckband all sewn on. Looks beautiful. The next step is optional. You can choose to top stitch this seam allowance down. I'm going to skip that because I don't want anything to interfere with the graphic here. So next is our sleeves. Now, no matter what pattern I'm making, whether the pattern has it or not, when I cut out my sleeves, I always do a double notch for the back. A lot of patterns have it, but some don't. This one didn't. This one had 1 notch on the front. I just skipped that. I always just do a double notch on the back. Just helps me differentiate the front from the back, because that matters when you're putting it in. So for this, you're going to fold in half, and we're going to sew down the length of the sleeve, and we're going to do an inset sleeve. Now, if you did do a memory hem, just make sure that you have that unfolded, because once we actually sew the sleeves in half, then we're going to fold that hem back down and then do the hem. You can also hem the sleeve flat like this before you sew it together, but I don't love how that looks, though it is faster and easier. So you do whatever you like. So we're going to sew down the sleeve with a 3/8 inch seam allowance. And then what I'm going to do before I insert the sleeves into the bodice is I'm just going to refold my memory hem and just hem that really quick. Okay, we have our sleeves sewn in half, hemmed. Man, do I hate hemming tiny things like this. It's so tedious and frustrating, at least in my opinion. So anybody out there that makes doll clothes, more power to you, because I would never be able to. Okay, so next we're going to attach our sleeves to the bodice. So you're going to take a sleeve, and you're going to want to make sure that you know which is the front and which is the back, and that's why we did our notches here for the back. And you're going to make sure your bodice is right side in, so wrong side's out. You're going to put your sleeve inside the bodice, and you're going to match the back to the back and the front to the front. The side seam matches to the side seam here. Then you would match the top, or the very center of the sleeve, to the shoulder seam. And then you would ease in the rest. Sometimes the bodice will have notches to match up to the notches on your sleeve. This one does not. Or if it does, I didn't mark them. But they should fit pretty well. You're not going to need to overly stretch anything. Then you're going to sew that in with a 3/8 inch seam allowance, and then repeat with the other sleeve. We have our sleeve sewn in. This is turning out so stinking cute. I love it. We're halfway there. We just got to do our skirt now. So the directions say to find the center of each of your skirt pieces. Normally I would mark that with a clip, but I am going to use my Cricut blue washable fabric pen. And the reason is because when I put in my gathering stitch, I obviously cannot sew over a clip. So this way I'll be able to see my marking. So I'm going to do that on all 4 pieces. Next step is to place your skirt pieces right sides together, and then sew each of the short ends with a 3/8 inch seam allowance. So I'm going to pin the rest of these together and go ahead and sew them together. Skirts are sewn together. The next step is to put in our gathering stitches. Now, again, the tutorial calls for 2. I only do 1 because I'm lazy. And when I'm doing my gathering stitches, I'm not going to go all the way around. What I'm going to do is I'm going to do each side. So from here to here, and then flip it, and then go from here to here. And the reason I do that is because it's easier to get a more even gather with each side instead of having to gather it all around at once. It's just easier to kind of do it in sections. So I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to sew my gathering stitch, which is a basting stitch or a straight stitch with your longest stitch length. And I'm going to get as close to the edge as I can, and I'll be right back. We have our gathering stitches in. The next step says to hem your skirts. I will not be doing that. Knits don't fray. I don't typically hem, so I'm going to skip that. So next we're going to find the center points of our front and back bodice. So we're just going to match up our side seams, find our center point here and mark it, and then find our other center point and mark that. And that's what we're going to match up to the center points that we marked on our skirts. Alright, so then we're going to take our skirt, and so that right sides are together, we're going to put that inside. Well, I guess we're going to put the bodice inside of the skirt. And you're going to pin your center points. So match those up. And your side seams should match up as well. After you have it all pinned together, you're going to gather until your skirt is the same length as your bodice. So you find your bobbin threads, and this method of gathering is a little bit easier because you essentially only have to gather from clip to clip and then just do that 4 times instead of having to kind of gather the entire front and the entire back piece. It just makes it a little bit easier to kind of gauge how much you have to gather. So that looks pretty good for that section. And I'm going to repeat with the other 3 sections. So I gathered my 4 sections and I pinned everything on. So I'm going to go ahead and sew this up with a 3/8 inch seam allowance, and I'm going to use my serger. Now normally at this point, if you hemmed and everything, you would be finished, but because I'm doing a double peplum, I'm basically just going to repeat the same step with my second skirt. So I'm going to put the bodice inside the skirt and match up again the center points and the side seams. Gather it up and go ahead and sew it on. So I've got everything all gathered up and pinned. I'm going to go ahead and sew this on with a 3/8 inch seam allowance, and then I will be back to show you how I finish up. Alright, how adorable did that turn out? I love it. Now, a couple things to note. If you see any basting stitches or gathering stitches in your skirt, you can go ahead and remove those at this point. If you chose not to hem, you will have your serger tails or your threads sticking out here. I'm going to just finish my serger tails with a little bit of fray chuck. You can get it at a lot of stores, Walmart, Amazon, Hobby Lobby, Joann. Sometimes I will push the seam allowance to one side and just do a little straight stitch just to kind of tack it. I'm not even going to bother with that this time, but you will need to finish those some type of way if you're not going to hem. The other thing is the tutorial suggests adding clear elastic into this seam, especially if you have a heavy skirt. So if you're using a heavier fabric for your skirt, and even especially if you're doing the knee length or the maxi length dress, that skirt's going to get pretty heavy. So putting that clear elastic on the inside just helps kind of keep everything from stretching out. But again, I don't have a need for that because this is just the top length and the fabric is pretty lightweight. So all I'm going to go ahead and do is just cut off my serger tails here, add a little fray check, and I'll be finished. Let me know what patterns you all would like to see me sew up in the comments. I'm going to make a pair of little bell bottoms to go with this shirt, probably in this mauve color. So stay tuned for that video next. Thanks for watching.